welcome back to the pod today. Today, Shelby and I have some super interesting AI news that we want to share with you, and so stick around. Okay, so Shelby, the first story I got from you, mind blowing. Maybe more the mind is the LLM's mind that it's blowing its own mind,
Uh-oh, is this
but
going where I think it is?
Anthropic came up with a white paper where they basically have concluded that there's LLMs have like emergent introspection awareness. So essentially, and what does that mean? That sounds like a lot of words. Essentially, what they did is they asked the LLM a question, right? And then they're able to inject as part of the LLM's uh, interpretability of that question a thought into the LLM, like a word. And so they insert like a word in all caps into the LLM's kind of thought process. And then the LLM would give back that word as part of the answer. And then they would ask the LLM, why did you give me back that word? And then the LLM would be like, I don't know. It came to my mind, but it wasn't really something I thought of myself, right? So it was like self-aware enough that it knew that this word had appeared in its thoughts or in its response, but it also knew that it didn't originate from its own thoughts, which is why they're saying like the models have the ability to do like emergent introspection or awareness on within the models themselves. So kind of another micro step towards maybe the LLMs are smarter than we think they are, and maybe these are really the seeds of like what a future intelligence might actually look like in the world. So what's your thoughts on all that, Shelby?
You've seen the movie Inception, right? They like incepted
Yes.
this thought into the AI's
Yes.
mind, I guess. I think it's kind of cool that like for one thing, it's it's mastered colloquialism so well. Like it understands how people talk, and so it doesn't say my working memory or something. It calls it it's like its mind, right? It like talks to us like a person, even though it is not, right? I think that's kind of interesting. It's become very personified in a way. The other thing that I like about this example you shared is that it didn't hallucinate. You know, maybe we as people, if we are put on the spot, why did you say that? We might not entirely understand our own thought process sometimes fully. And we might be like wanting to save face by coming up with a reason so we don't look like we're randomly saying stuff. Like we want to feel like we are rational and thoughtful. So I was like glad that the AI said, I don't know, instead of just like, it was just in my mind or something instead of making up a reason, because if it made up a reason that would be in the realm of it's hallucinating stuff. So I liked its honesty. It goes along nicely with introspection, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure they ran the test like multiple times, right? So
Sure.
maybe there was some subset where they had some hallucinations, but it seemed like for the most part they were kind of getting consistent results. And the first thing that I kind of thought of when I read the article was that quote where they say, I think, therefore I am, right? It's like
Mm.
kind of like the test of like, how do you know that you're actually real and that you're actually a human? Well, if you can think that thought, then therefore, there must be some intelligence behind it. And we can see that same pattern at least reflected in the AI's response to these like injected words into its thought process. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I know there's probably going to be like more aspects of the human brain than just like the token predicting techniques that are used in LLMs now that probably need to happen for before LLMs can get to like a human level completion of tasks. Like for example, like we as humans, we kind of have like and I don't know if we really fully understand this, but we kind of have like short-term memory and we have like a long-term memory. And my understanding of science, which maybe this is off a little, but seems generally true to me, is like when you go to sleep, like your brain figures out, what am I going to take from the long-term memory and index into what am I going to take from the short-term memory and index into the long-term memory. And it feels like somehow sleep is like related to that whole like indexing process, at least for me. So I think we'll probably see a lot more emphasis from like the LLM like research labs on better memory processes, right? Because I mean, right now they have like trivial things where they're trying to extract thoughts and then re-inject them as part of the inference process when you ask a new question. But it'd be much better if there's just like a way to kind of like update these short-term and long-term, maybe like vector stores or things like that in the future. So that the entity like the LLM actually like grows over time, right? So anyways, this is just random
Question for
thoughts.
you.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
For anyone who might be alarmed about an AI overlord overthrowing of the humans, do you think that this emergent awareness, introspection, is any cause for concern?
I mean, I think it's kind of like evidence that either there's two conclusions that I have to this, right? Evidence that LLMs are smarter than people are giving them credit for, right? Like they're doing something more than just token prediction, right? That could be one interpretation. Another interpretation that I could definitely see from this, which I don't hear anybody saying, is that maybe humans just aren't that complex. Maybe we really are mostly token prediction, right? I mean, I think there's more going on with like our memory systems and things like that. But I don't know. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? I think people overly give humans credits for being a lot smarter than maybe we really are. And I think also LLMs are probably underappreciated, right? And are probably smarter than we're kind of giving them credit for because they have a lot of flaws still at this point in the game, right? So I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, I think there's some complexities in the human systems that still definitely haven't been cracked or solved. But then I think LLMs are probably smarter than a lot of people are giving them credit for. So, anyways, that's kind of my perspective on it, at least today. I reserve the right to update my perspective at any point in time if any of this ends up being false, but due to future research. But based on the data I've seen to now, that seems to make sense that LLMs are smarter than people give them credit for, and humans are dumber than people give them credit for. I don't know.
Seems about right. That follows.
We're going to meet in the middle.
So funny. Well, cool.
What have you
I've got
seen
a
this week,
story.
Shelby? Yeah, go. Yeah.
So, a lot of the time we talk about like some like the way AI is being used for the adversarial side, and obviously we know we've got to balance that out with some tooling for security experts to help them keep up and keep going, right? So I just was looking into one tool that's fairly new. It's called SOC Autofocus, and its maker is Blumira. And the target audience for this tool is like your IT teams, your MSPs, basically anyone who's going to be looking at your security alerts, right? And the goal is to help your analysts do a better job, right? So they were actually pretty clear. They said they're not trying to replace the humans. They feel like this is an aid for the human analysts to be able to do their job better with the technology assisted. So the goal is to reduce alert fatigue and accelerate incident response, which interestingly it was kind of showing like, oh, this is how you can measure your ROI on this tool, by showing how it cuts down on your incident time, and also just kind of have better responses for your alerts. So how does it work? Basically, if you picture a screen, the way I saw it, it had like analysis on one side of an alert, And then it had the assigned responders, kind of the typical things you'd expect to see in like a sim or something like that. And then on the side, it had autofocus on the other side. And this autofocus, it would give like expert guidance. And information that matches the context. So, you've got your information about the alert, and then it's going to kind of give you a little bit more. Basically, like if you are a junior analyst and you're trying, or just someone who doesn't understand the alert that you're looking at, like, why is this a problem? What does it necessarily mean that this particular alert happened like this, right? And it just gives you context and information that relates to that specific alert. So it's supposed to kind of bridge that gap if you have any knowledge gaps, right? Give you the information you need to make an informed decision. But then it kind of goes another step further. It gives you step by step, kind of like walking through the workflow of it. So down below the analysis side, there's a workflow, and it asks some questions. Is this behavior expected? Yes. And then it can take you to another branch off of that workflow. And if you click no, is this behavior expected? Then it can take you to next steps in your investigation. So it guides the analysts. Right, so the humans are still running the show, but they're making smarter decisions because they're getting informed context, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. It also, I imagine if you're using this and you're taking advantage of that information that's being put in front of you, it's going to train your users too. Your SOC analysts are going to become better at what they're doing. Takes a little bit of that guesswork out, makes their job easier to just get the relevant information, I think, to make a good decision. So that was, I thought it seemed like a cool tool. I really like where this is going. And then just trying to think like critically, what blind spots might we still have on this? Will the tool recognize its limitations, or will it give you false confidence? We know the TTPs of today, but we don't always know the TTPs of tomorrow and next week. I hope that like it will continue to stay current with all the attacks as they kind of keep coming to help guide the analysis through in a similar vein, right? Because things are always changing. But yeah, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's super cool. I definitely think that SOC analysts and cyber threat hunters or cyber threat intelligence professionals, they could use a lot of more help, right? Because they're pretty, especially SOC analysts, they're pretty overwhelmed, right? And I believe strongly in the concept of like creating force magnifiers for humans, rather than there's all these like hipster companies coming out where they're like, we're gonna automatically triage every alert that comes out of the system using AI agents, and like, yeah, cool, that sounds amazing. There's no way that's ever gonna work. I mean, it's gonna like be another layer of triage, right? And maybe eventually that would just get like absorbed into everyone's security stacks. But today it's novel, but tomorrow it'll just be like part of like the normal process of like weeding out false positives, right? But what's not going to go away is eventually there's going to be some subset of these notables or suspicious events that a human's going to have to review. And if you can really help the human review those a lot faster, or train up people a lot faster so you can, I mean, it takes a lot of resources to, when you hire a SOC analyst, to get them to the point where they're operating as a mid or a senior. So maybe, AI is helping them just get trained up faster. I think that's a great area to be working on. And I know you're probably not aware of this, but I've been secretly building a product and like over the last, 6+ months that actually kind of operates in this space as well. So I have some companies testing that right now. So I'm not gonna talk as specifically about that today, but maybe in one of the future pods we can talk about it. But it's, yeah, I want to look at this solution more because I haven't looked at it yet.
Casually dropping that bomb. That's cool.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna let you know, like I have a lot of thoughts in this space because I've been working on this space for like the last year, right? So, but it sounds like based on what you said, like we've taken slightly different approaches, but I do think yeah, that's a really good space to like. There's a lot of improvement in that space that could occur. And I think right now, like a lot of companies are just not looking at the bulk of the suspicious events because they just don't have the resources to do it, right? So if there's capabilities out there using AI to help people triage stuff faster or better, um, then I think that's gonna be, you know, I think that's gonna, I think that's gonna become the new normal, right? So.
Yeah. And I love that it sounds like your tool probably does this as well as the SOC autofocus. I love that in previous conversations we've talked about the skill gap because you're going to have AI that's expert in some things and students who are using AI and maybe aren't developing the nitty gritty like low level skills that might have been required 10 years ago or whatever, right? And I feel like this is bridging that gap so nicely, right? With the help of AI because they're still in the alerts, they are still looking at the technical details, and they're being tutored all along the way by the AI and making more informed decisions. I think that's really cool. So I get excited about that too.
Yeah, I hope there's a future where like anybody who's sitting in an operations center, like a network operations center or like an app monitoring operations center, could say to themselves like, "Oh, in 5 years, I want to be in a cybersecurity career," and then they could just like say like, "AI model, help me so I can learn more about cybersecurity as I'm running through my like day-to-day operations," almost like take your existing pool, because like yeah, take your existing pool of like people that you have doing other types of monitoring tasks and see if you can train them up into the security monitoring sectors as well, right? Um, and I think that the limiting factors there is really like the time and resources to get someone trained up is a lot. So I think AI could definitely help in that space. So cool. Well, on other news about AI taking all our jobs, you want to hear about the latest research report that came out?
Oh, tell me. I want to know.
So, Scale AI, if you don't know about them, they historically have generated a lot of like training data and then provided that to like other companies that have generated models. So they have like a center for AI security or safety. So they call it CAIS. And they basically put a test together and they use platforms that freelancers typically use, right? So think about like an Upwork or a TaskRabbit or something like that. And they took a sample of tasks. So someone asked them to complete a job, and then these freelance workers completed the job. So they had both the questions and the answers for the data set from these platforms. And what they did is they took those same questions or job descriptions, the things that other humans were able to complete, right? And then they provided that data to various AI models. And then they took the outputs from those AI models and they had humans review the outputs, but the human outputs and the AI outputs were all mixed together, so they didn't really know whose were whose, right?
Okay.
And so um, the results were kind of surprising, right? Given all the hype we've heard from the industry, you would just think that like the LLMs were just like crushing it, right? You give them a task and they would just, it'd be easy for another human to look at it and be like, yeah, that's awesome, let's go. But turns out most of the models performed under 2%. So the highest
Under
system was
2%?
yeah. So only 2% of their outputs were actually accepted by another human. And the highest was Manus, which kind of like integrates multiple models to use like a full desktop environment. That they got a 2.5% acceptance rating. That was the highest. And Gemini 2.5 Pro got a zero point 0.8, so less than 1% of them were accepted. So actually, the rankings were Manus, Grok 4, Claude 4.5 Sonnet, GPT-5, and then Gemini at the bottom. So, kind of surprising results. When digging into the white paper on why the humans rejected the results, right? And reminder, they don't know if they're coming from humans or if they're coming from the LLMs. They just know, they've just been told, if you were the customer and you asked this thing, would you accept the result that came back? And so 45% of them, when they rejected it, they did so because it was poor quality. They just felt the quality was too poor of what they got back. And then 35% said that what they got back was incomplete or didn't really answer the task that had been provided. So we can see like basically over 80% of these things were rejected for one of those two reasons.
For being bad or not all the way done.
Yeah, and like, you know, it kind of like in any workplace, you know, you're gonna get called out if you don't complete the assignment, right? That's obviously like a auto reject. And then if you did it but it was poor quality, like imagine I just sent you a report, Shelby, and like I just made up graphs or something, you know, like that's probably not gonna get like your approval rating. So
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
yeah, go ask me anything.
Um, do we know the approval rating of the human submitted answers?
Well, we know that the data set that they were evaluating, the humans had accepted the outputs, right?
Oh, okay.
But we don't. It wasn't like you're trying to do like a AI to human comparison on the outputs.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I don't think that was part of the study, right?
Okay.
That's a good question though. I'd be interested to see another study that does something like that. Like, yeah, that'd be interesting. Like, do the humans stuff get rejected at similar rates and for similar reasons? Yeah, that wasn't really, as far as I understand, that wasn't really part of the scope of this. But yeah, that'd be an interesting question too, right? Because I gotta imagine that. I mean, have you ever used any of those platforms before? Like, I would say 50% of the time, I kick back the work, right? Because like it's like a dude who's like doing
iterative, right? It's an iterative process.
Well,
It's like
it's
here's
like
the answer, and you're like, not quite. Try again.
it's also like a human thing, right? Because they're like, I'm doing all these different tasks. I'm just trying to crank them out as fast as possible. And I, as the customer, know that if I just tell them when they kick it over, no, that wasn't quite what I wanted, that they'll go spend more time on it, right? And it's not like I'm not paying them more money for the more time. Maybe this sounds like an evil thing now that I'm saying this out loud. But you just get a high fidelity result if you like, you know, squeaky wheel gets the grease to a certain degree, right? So like if you're like, no, that wasn't quite what I asked for, then they will spend more effort on it, right? Which I don't know how that computes into this equation.
That would
But
be interesting for like future follow-up on this because if someone made the argument that, you know, iteration and feedback is part of the process for humans and machines alike, like I'm sure graphic designers feel that pain, you know, that back and forth and things like that. I'd be interested to see how many iterations or like it would take until humans started accepting the results more, or yeah,
oh, that's a
I
good.
don't know.
That's
So we'll submit it for future research.
yeah. There's probably a lot of additional research you could do in this space, right?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I wonder if how the LLMs would react if you kick the action item back to them, like I typically do to like half the work I get off those platforms. Um, with that being said, though, I do have to say from my own personal experience, which I understand is anecdotal and not, you know, really repeatable, but ever since LLMs became a thing, like I've sent way less work to these liquid work platforms. Because I feel like usually when I have a discrete task and I can package up all the requirements, I typically like just hand that to an LLM. Which kind of goes against what this thing's saying, the research is saying, because like my own personal experience is like I spend way less money on those platforms than I did 2 years ago, and because like if I have to define everything like I have to for a platform like Upwork to get actually good results out of it, and then half the time I have to complain to the person to go back and do more. Like I feel like at that rate I should just use like I should just go pay $200 a month for GPT Pro 5 Pro or whatever, and I could complain to the LLM. It's quicker, right? It's quicker at getting back to my complaints. But because I do complain about its output too. So maybe what we're learning from this, Shelby, is I'm just a complainer. I'm not happy with anything, and I want better results, whether it's from an LLM or from a human.
Well, there are two
So
sides to that coin. Maybe you're visionary and you're searching for improvement and progress.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sounds better
I
than
don't.
complainer.
Yeah, it's all about the marketing spin. Yep. Well, did you
Yeah.
see anything else this week that was interesting? What'd you see, Shelby?
Nothing like too crazy, but I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the AI regulation. And I mentioned this to you earlier. It feels like oftentimes when you've got new technology, it takes there's a gap of time before governments realize, okay, we need to put some regulation around this, we need to put some sort of guidance, best practices or whatever it is for it to actually become like litigation or things like that. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see that with AI making things so fast, like commissioners and people around the world are taking notice, and they're trying to do work. They're trying to avoid being 10 years behind it, right? So I thought that was interesting. So I just want to talk about different things going on a little bit throughout the world. So in the Europe, in our friends in Europe, okay, so the European Commission's guidelines, they have this thing called the EU AI Act, and they are moving that forward. So they now have, just want to talk like very high level about kind of what is in this act. One thing that it offers that I thought was very practical. I haven't looked at it in depth, but hopefully it is practical. If anyone's used it, give us a comment, shout out, tell us your thoughts about it. But basically there's draft guidance as well as a reporting template. So if you have a serious AI security event, incident, then they give you a draft to work with. I'm sure you've got plenty to work on when you've got an incident on your hands, right? So they give you a draft to help you report it and resolve it and things like that. So I thought that was kind of cool. Their definition of like a serious AI incident would be something that's causing significant harm to either people or infrastructure or rights or the environment. And I thought that last one was interesting because AI itself is not entirely environmentally friendly. So I'm very interested to see how they kind of define that, or I don't know, maybe it might be up to specific cases. It also includes details like reporting timelines and investigative duties and cooperation that you need to take, things you've got to do to help clean it up, make everything right again after those kinds of incidents, which I think is really good because as everyone includes AI into their stuff, it's going to be nice to have that guidance. They're also starting to explore some guidelines for transparency for AI systems. This is this is not complete yet. It is in the works. They're like opening it up to consultation. They're in the information gathering stage. So that's just some stuff going on in Europe, and then some of the like reactions we're seeing within Europe. So the Italian Senate, they adopted an AI governance law, and this complements the EU AI Act. So it seems like they're all kind of adding their own special flavor to it. The UK Department of Science, Innovation and Technology also published a policy paper regarding AI assurance, which someone please tell me what AI assurance means. I don't know what those words mean coming together. Yeah, I know what AI, and I kind of think I know what assurance is. I don't know what they are together, so maybe that can be next week's topic.
You are assured of the human destruction by the AI. That's what AI assurance is. No joking.
I'm I'm sure this could have been solved by a quick search, but sometimes mystery is exciting. Anyway, so we'll scoot on over to our friends in Asia. So the National Cybersecurity Standardization Technical Committee of China. This is why we have acronyms, I think. Man, that was hard. They published an update to their AI safety governance framework. And then also the CAC, which is the Cyberspace Administration of China, they implemented rules on methods for identifying AI-generated synthetic content. And this is one I wanted to get some opinion on, get your thoughts on. So basically, they're like creating a standard or rules that everyone has to follow. So if you're making text, image, audio, video, and virtual scenes, you're going to have to mark somewhere on there somehow that matches the CAC guidance that this was AI generated. So, wanted to get your thoughts. What's your reaction to that? Do you think it's necessary? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's possible? Do you think people are actually going to follow along?
So this is coming out of China, right? Is what you're saying. So I mean, I think, yeah, I think the entities that are existing in China are probably gonna have to follow these standards, right? I mean, I think that the what the tech companies in the U.S. are doing right now is they're each kind of like implementing their own watermarking technologies, and the reason that they're doing that is to try to stay off a like federal or state level litigation forcing them to do it because they fear that the state or federal level enforcement will be much worse and much more burdensome on them that,
Mm,
or maybe technology won't even make sense, right? A lot of times laws get passed and there's no way technically for them to even implement those laws, so then they just get fined like crazy, or you know it just becomes an operating expense at that point. But so they're trying to implement these things, and I think at some point there'll probably be some, and there probably already is, but like some nonprofit entity established in the U.S. which comes up with a standard, and then it's a very loose standard, and then everybody's implementations that they're doing today will probably, you know, only need to be tweaked slightly to meet those standards. Um, so I mean, I think this is coming down the pipeline in the U.S., and the tech companies have seen this play out before in other ways, and now AI is just like the latest iteration of this, and so they're trying to stem off regulation getting forced on them and them kind of being more part of the solution. Now, whether what the U.S. aligns with and what Europe aligns with and what Asia aligns with, or like China aligns with, I mean, those standards are probably going to be pretty different, in my opinion. I
hmm
think maybe maybe EU's will be more restrictive, and then U.S. companies will just adopt it, just kind of like we've seen with GDRP. Um, but it feels like the standards that come out in China are usually so different that U.S. companies are willing to stand up separate business divisions that are just in China, just for those standards, right? So, like in the cybersecurity space, essentially there's laws in China that say if you have any type of encryption keys, the government needs to have access to those, right? So that's why a lot of companies will stand up basically identical tech stacks inside of China, because they're like, okay, if you want access to China stuff, it's there, but it's not interconnected with our U.S. based stuff at all.
Mm.
Um,
I can
so
tell you about the one that I know about. So if you go to contentcredentials.org, and we can link it,
okay,
there actually is a group. It's a coalition, um, and they've published like a standard for content credentials. Right now, it is a voluntary thing, right? They're creating a framework or like a standard so that you can have like credentials and a history. So you take a picture on your phone and then you edit it in Photoshop and then you send it to, have it AI enhanced or whatever it is. It can have its own history. And it's this coalition is led by a lot of groups. So I worked at Adobe, and it was a really cool, exciting project. Microsoft, Intel, BBC, TruePic, Sony, Google, Meta, Amazon. A bunch of these companies are like in on it, but it's just kind of a voluntary, whoever wants to adopt it standard. But I think it's really cool when it's actually applied, because then to any user who's kind of scrolling through internet content, they can, if the publisher, abides by this standard, then they can know the history of this picture. Okay, it looks like it was edited to show like brighter colors, but the rest of the content is legitimate, or things like that. Like, I think it's so helpful for consumers. Um, so yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Interested to see how it works out, because as is the challenge with so many technology pieces, we have a lot of standards,
yeah,
right? Which maybe makes sense and maybe doesn't in each case. But yeah.
I I know there was that time period where everyone was all the rage about the blockchain, right? But these type of scenarios are one of the few scenarios where I feel like blockchain technology makes a ton of sense. Like anytime that you want to keep a un like an unmodifiable chain of custody about a
Hmm.
thing, right? Like who modified the image and when, all the way from like this camera snapped it and signed it when they snapped the picture. Then this editor made this change, and then this editor made this change, and then it went on this website, right? Like those type of things, in my opinion, you don't have to use blockchain technologies to achieve those. We were doing those things inside of Windows and other operating systems long before blockchain even existed. So there's definitely other ways to do it, but you know, that's definitely a scenarios where I feel like blockchain type solutions would be really strong.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
good point.
where other places where they're applying blockchain just makes no sense from like a business
Yeah.
standpoint. It's like, oh, we have this hammer called blockchain, and we're just gonna use it for everything. You know, like everything's a nail. But
That's a good point because it has the integrity, right? You can't mess it up after, it's
yeah,
got a
once it's
history.
committed to the chain, and then it's also
Yeah.
viewable by everybody.
Hmm.
So you have like the visibility, you have strong cryptography preventing people from like breaking the chain. I don't know. That stuff just makes a lot of sense to me. Now,
Cool.
because it makes so much sense to me, I also, as a cybersecurity person, know we'll never implement that solution. We'll implement something much worse, and it'll be easily broken. But I could hope. I could hope. I can dream, Shelby. I can dream. So
I think it's a great idea.
I
And
hope.
then, like, just some of the last things for,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't cover all of the AI related like regulations, but things are happening in India too. They're looking at ways to leverage AI to accelerate their economic growth. Japan has also named some areas, four specific areas where they want to investigate AI use and impact and stuff like that. Stuff going on in South Korea. Just there's a lot, but I'll end there.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll come back to it in future podcasts, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure it's an evolving space that like viewers would be interested in hearing more about. Uh,
of course.
but with that being said, I found something amazing, and I want to share it with you, Shelby, because I feel like this is a hidden gem in the universe.
What?
So, have you ever seen that show, The IT Crowd, previously?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there's an episode or two where the manager, what's her name? Jan? One of those.
I don't remember.
She she goes into like the back room, which is like the data center, and then there's like this emo guy lurking back there that she had no idea even worked in the company, right? And when she came back out, she's like, "Why do you tell me that there's an entire person back there?" They're like, "Oh, we don't talk about him," right? Like, so I saw that same actor is doing a new TV show, and the emo guy in the back, and he's
Okay.
also emo in this new TV show.
Is he
And
even acting?
I don't know. Maybe he
Or is
really
he
is
himself?
emo. I don't know. I mean, it's a very maybe it's gone so method he's just became that person. But it's been like 20 years between like, these two things. So, but the new show takes place in like medieval times. Maybe not medieval. Maybe it's more like what do you call that? Like Paul Revere times, like colonial times.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm probably butchering it, but it's it's definitely not in this it's definitely not today. It's definitely not current. It's in the olden times, okay?
Okay.
And it's pretty hilarious because he's like in the olden times, but he's emo, and it's called the completely made up adventures of Dick Turnup. So, and it's a completely absurd comedy where there's an emo dude hanging out in the Middle Ages. I don't know what that actually is. I don't know anything about history, to be honest, Shelby. I know cybersecurity. I don't know history, but I also know the show is hilarious. I watched it on Apple TV, but I don't know. It might be on other
Wait. Was
channels
he
too.
like an emo guy from modern times that was transported, or is he just ahead of the emo trend, ahead of his time?
I think he's just ahead of his time. Like he's
Okay.
like a kind of like a progressive dude in like in the olden days, right?
That's so funny.
So, um, it's definitely a comedy. not based on any facts at all. So, as the title, probably the completely made up adventures that Dick turned up probably tells you, probably tells the viewer this is not going to be real. But it's funny too because it's like, yeah, I won't spoil it, but he integrates a lot of progressive things into like a time where like everything is very like there's witches and all that type of stuff, right? Where you're kind of like, you know, everything's just magic, right? You know, so.
That sounds fun. Sounds good.
Yeah. It's a good show. It's a good show. Give it a try if you enjoy comedies that don't take themselves too seriously. So.
Excellent.
So. What about you?
Something really, really important to talk with you about today. It's actually probably the most important thing. Spinach. Okay.
Okay.
When
I don't
you
really like spinach. But okay.
Help me out here, Bryce. Just kidding.
Continue, Shelby.
So when you, or the hypothetical you, because it sounds like maybe you aren't into spinach, when you go grocery shopping, you used to see spinach in a bunch, right? With a little twisty tie on it.
Yeah.
In the area that has the thunderstorms, right?
Yeah.
Now spinach is only coming in like the clamshells and the baggies, because it's like pre-washed, and there's a trend. People are not buying mature spinach as often, and so they're starting, like, grocery stores are carrying it less. Are we just going to let them get away with this, Bryce?
Why are they doing that? Is it because why would consumers not demand the spinach with all the options of things to eat? They're like, oh, I really need the spinach.
They're like, I could have steak for dinner, but there's this really good looking spinach over there. So maybe I'll go for that instead.
I don't think you should take eating advice from me in my decisions. So I feel like that's a road to ruin.
They're making more baby spinach is what's replacing mature spinach.
I see.
So we're getting a lot more baby spinach, but it's usually coming pre-washed, which is a very nice convenience. And then it's coming in like more like plastic packaging. So I guess good things are it grows faster. But the bad things is it loses its texture really fast. So for anyone who wants to just kind of steam it down, get the grown.
Is the baby spinach more expensive than the normal spinach?
I don't know actually about the price, but
like
apparently it's just like demand. People like the convenience of the ones that are pre-washed. I'm like, why can't we pre-wash the big boy spinach, the big girl spinach, just the baby spinach?
You heard it here first, folks.
So
Shelby's
I just want you to
giving
think
you a
about
pro
this.
tip on how to make more money in the grocery
It's just
industry.
very important, right?
It's very important that we get the spinach right.
We talk about the real stuff here.
Yeah,
that's what I got.
All I know is when I hear that thunder, I know I've taken a wrong turn at the grocery store, and I just get out of there as fast as I can, Shelby. So I'm like, I've gone to the green area.
You turn toward the bakery or toward the dairy?
Exactly. I just know I need to get out of there. That's all I know. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss, the spinach loss, and I hope they rectify that immediately. So, well, hope you can think about eating spinach while you're watching the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turnup. And we'll be back next week to bring you more AI news. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. See ya.
Bye.